I'm Hotep and welcome back to my channel. Now, isn't it a little bit peculiar the way that people react to this community? For those of you who have been around for any length of time, you probably have seen at least some examples of this. Recently, we were fed another example about the way that people react to this current. A friend of mine calls this current poisoning, and I like that. It's this venomous energy current that really fucks people up. I'm laughing because I find it enjoyable to watch. I know that's terrible, but is it really terrible? For them, maybe. But I just really had to vocalize some of it because of how interesting it has been to watch these examples recurrently unfold over the years in such a textbook way. It seems like it always starts the same, that people touch our community. They're drawn by the obvious allure, the very advanced levels of experience of some of our members, and the spark, the magical spark of the place. But the minute they don't feel like the smartest person in the room, they flee, or it slowly festers and rots and stagnates into this hatred and this petty, vile lowliness. And like recently we had another example of this where someone made these really nasty articles aimed directly at our community and even at the master that we follow. I like this. I know that that's not, as evolved and superior as it should be, but you know what? Sometimes these people are good food for evolution. They're like good fuel. It's just, haters are an incredible resource. They are valuable, and they will really serve you well if you know how to use them. And I was just contemplating the way that people react to the distance of the order. That silence of the Ascetians says everything. That silence is something that, that people don't really know how to handle. And so I like seeing the myriad of strange ways that people interpret our devotion to them. Because, we aren't enslaved by social media like some of these other people are. We don't need direct validation from them to be loyal to them. We don't need this shitty dynamic that these people engage in where they have this group or this author they look up to, and the author's like on Facebook making a cult of personality, or they're directly interacting with people, and that feeds people. That feeds weak people. They get to feel special, like, oh, this published author is directly commenting on me, saying whatever, and so they quickly get enamored by that and looped into it, and they start feeling important by association, and I find that to be kind of distasteful. And I think maybe that's one reason why us Ascetianists are so condemned by mortal minds, because we don't care about that stuff. We are involved in a current more ancient than any of that, and we can follow the path in our hearts from any distance. And just because we're not meeting up physically, well, some are, right? That's the underground scene. Not all of us are involved in that. But the unique thing about this path is that it doesn't matter when it comes to our loyalty and dedication. So I guess all I say is, if that triggers someone, good. If you can't function without feeling like the smartest, most magical, most gifted, most specialist person in the room, then you're not suited for a magical path, because this is part of the ladder of initiation. Just because someone is a renowned master of the magical arts does not mean that you are entitled to have access to them. And if that triggers you into saying that Ascetianism is fake and that, Ascetianists are these pathetic frauds who, think that our way is the only way, yada, 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 then all I can say is good for us that you're so triggered by our existence and by our passion that you're revealing yourself by mirroring so heavily onto us. Because Ascetianists aren't the ones who are being pathetic, posing on social media for validation with cheap props to look like the most magical witches of all. We are the ones that are silently pursuing evolution, even when it's ugly, even when it's not photogenic, even when it's difficult, even when we're afraid, even when it's just not some well put together package where we're just magically floating through everything, where it's a difficult path. You have to break yourself and undo yourself and break open and be reborn every day. And I was just thinking about this. I was just thinking about how good it is for us to really experience these textbook examples, because it's like an initiation for us, in my opinion. It's an initiatory experience. And they will never understand the initiatory experience of friendships in this community either. When we are this united violet web, where we're not competing with each other for who's, the most magical being, who knows the most. The people who are in leadership positions in our community are there because they absolutely deserve to be. And again, the ladder of initiation is something that these people present themselves as experts of witchcraft. It's so magical, and yet they can't comprehend this simple fact that not everyone is supposed to be a leader. Not everyone is a leader. And that is okay. Not all of us are meant to be leaders. And I personally feel more fulfilled, much happier, serving the people that I look up to. And if that gets me labeled as a fanatic, good. Good for me. I love it. I love it when this stuff happens. It's so flattering that people would, waste so much time and energy on what other people are doing, what other people believe. And if you can't handle someone contradicting you, if you can't handle being wrong, then what are you even doing on the magical path? I guess these are just my thoughts lately. I've just been contemplating how excellent it is when haters come along and give us more fuel. So, again, if the inaccessibility and elitism of Ascetianism is triggering to you, then that says everything. If you think that, Ascetianists are trying to be gatekeepers, then you're just a mere example for our point. There are these shitty fake traditions that claim to speak for the goddess Aset, that have these people hoarding these fake plastic titles, claiming to be a mouthpiece for Aset, claiming to speak for what she does and does not approve of or like. It's pathetic. If we trigger these people, good. If these people are upset by our existence, good. Because they're just kindling for the fire. And my message today, I guess, is never be afraid to go to the source, because there are all kinds of fake traditions popping up that are kind of shallow offshots of real initiatory branches of witchcraft, and really at their core, they all have one thing in common, which is that the people at the center of them want to be a leader, which again goes back to my previous point, which is that not all of us are destined to be leaders. And this is something that humans can't seem to understand. This is why humans and I do not particularly get along. It's because of their mindset of weakness, that they can't comprehend their own insignificance. And when you're trying to touch upon any form of witchcraft or any primordial current of magic, you have to accept your own insignificance. And so if me, for example, I'm just gonna use myself as an example. If I feel this fervent, passionate devotion to the path and this passionate devotion to my friends and think that supporting true leaders is beautiful, far more beautiful than it would be for me to pretend to be the leader that I'm not, it says everything about human minds that this is such a horrifying, abominating flame for them to run from. You know, they pose behind these pathetic articles, these scathing, vitriolic diatribes against the people that they only envy and cannot touch anywhere near their level of devotion. All they can do is flock together in these shallow circles, holding no real gnosis. So, you know what? I love the way that Ascetionists have this natural talent for triggering the fakes. The way that our passion sets them on fire. And they burn and they scream about it. Good, let them scream. Again, if you need to have direct validation from someone, then you don't really support them, do you? You're not really loyal to them, are you? And not everyone deserves that loyalty. And to me, I think it's beautiful that the Ascetians can move crowds the way that they can without saying a word. That silence is initiatory. They don't have to do anything, and they have all these people kneeling for them. And I mean in a bad way. And those of us who embrace that flame freely will always have this like guiding beacon in these situations where stones thrown by others feel more like validation, just in an inverted sense that they will never understand. Again, just because someone is a master of a magical path or a magical art, I don't know quite, how to say this, just because someone is an initiated guide does not mean that you deserve to have access to them. It doesn't mean you're entitled to anything from them. So I feel proud to be an Ascetionist, that I can feel such beauty and devotion without needing anything in return, without being appointed as some grandiose leader, without having to pose about it on social media. I feel beyond grateful to know some of the people that I know in this community, because mere proximity to them has ignited my magical path in ways that I only dreamed of before. They didn't have to do anything. Their friendship was like an initiatory experience. So here's your reminder that you can't do it all alone, but you need a real seed, you need a real flame. And if you are feeling alone, don't be afraid to reject these people, these false currents, false traditions, because it's better to be alone and feel the pain of that than it is to get involved in a group that bears no real fruit or gnosis, but pretends otherwise. It can feel comforting to be like, oh, I have a real in-life coven. I have a real group. But do you? Do you really? How common is it that these groups have this person at the center who is self-aggrandizing all the time? This person who thinks way too highly of themselves and passes along false gnosis. UPG, as they call it. It's so much better to feel the pain of distance from like real true groups than it is to get stuck like that. So yeah, just don't be afraid to go to the source. You know, it's okay to be lonely sometimes. It's okay to feel lost. It's better to do that than it is to turn over the keys of your own growth to these groups. So I guess that's my main thought and message today, is be careful about what's out there, especially on social media. There are all kinds of fakes out there who just think way too highly of themselves. And always go back to the root of emptiness. You know, how they say empty your cup. I think the first and foremost step that we should take on any magical path is to accept how insignificant and small we are. And if you can do that, you're already miles ahead of the vast majority of the population attempting to pursue magic of any kind. I've met people who are far more magical, and they're just like a janitor or something. Like, not to be cliche or anything, or they're just like a farmer, you know? And even if they don't like accept spirituality, even if they're not like on the surface, I'm an occultist and I'm a special witch and here's my wand and, you know, or here's my shiny sword. Like, I've met farmers, janitors, humble people who are far more magical and spiritual than some of these pathetic idiots on social media. So be safe out there, and try to go within before you turn over your inner power to these false prophets and fake priestesses, and never forget to stop fighting.